We're now on item 10.2. 10.2 is our last public hearing for the evening. This is regarding the proposed solar 2.0 net energy metering successor program. Before staff starts the staff report, I'd like to mention that this item was held over from our August 6th agenda. This has allowed for more time for public consideration. During that time, the council received correspondence, and I have a copy of these letters which we have received, which all the council people have received and reviewed. And with that, we'll start with the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So the item 10.2 on your agenda tonight is a staff proposal for a Roseville Solar 2.0 program. And I'm going to give you a high-level overview of what that was, and then I have Philip here who's going to talk a little bit more about the details of what we're proposing tonight. So under current state law, specific metering that's called net metering is required for solar customers. So the state has mandated that we meter our solar customers a certain way. And the net metering that California requires does provide subsidies to solar customers to incentivize folks to put rooftop solar on their homes or businesses, and as well to help out in what was an emerging technology and arguably could still be an emerging technology. Local governing boards under the state law can change the level or amount of these subsidies or how we net meter once there's enough solar installed, once we reach a certain threshold, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the proposal before you tonight is a proposal to pay what is a cost-based rate to new solar customers after a certain point in time for overgeneration. So this is any solar that they're not using for their own use at any point in time, and they push back to the grid and sell to us. We're recommending that we use a cost-based rate for that payment, and then that will also reduce the subsidies that are currently being paid to solar customers. So quickly, I'll go through, you know, your 9 council priorities, but everything we do and every recommendation that we come to you with has to align with these priorities. And what we're recommending tonight aligns with a couple of the priorities specifically, but most specifically with sound and stable utilities. We also have to align this recommendation and what we do with rates with the council rate policies, which are on the next slide, which were approved by the council earlier this year in April. We have 4 policies. One is an adequacy policy, which is to ensure that the rates that we establish are enough to cover what it costs to operate the utility. Our incremental policy basically says that we would prefer to have more frequent lower rate increases than less frequent higher rate increases. We'd rather have more incremental, smaller increases if we need to have increases. The cost-based policy states that the rates that we charge for the services we provide should match the cost of those services. So, for example, if there's a cost that is a fixed cost, like meter reading, that might cost the same for almost every residential customer, that charge should be the same for every residential customer. If it's a volumetric charge, like the amount of energy you use, then the rate should be a volumetric rate. And then finally, the fair and equitable policy. I just noticed we have 2 3s there. This is 4. The fair and equitable policy states that revenue from a customer group, so residents as one customer group, need to match the cost to serve that group of customers. So in this case, the residential group, and that we need to charge each customer the cost to serve that customer to the extent that that's feasible. So you heard in a previous presentation tonight about all of the things that Roseville has accomplished with solar. What we didn't mention is that Roseville today is very green, and about half the electricity that Roseville residents receive and businesses receive today is clean, carbon-free energy. That number will increase significantly under state law. We're required to increase the amount of renewable energy that we acquire over time with increasing amounts, and by 2045 we will have to have 100% of our energy be renewable. And as Councilmember Gore mentioned at the previous presentation, rooftop solar does not count towards our renewable energy requirement under state law. So the California net energy metering, how the state has defined it, again, it mandates that we pay electric or solar customers for excess solar generation at full retail rates, and I'll explain what that is on the next slide. This does provide incentives, as I mentioned, and these incentives are subsidized by other customers, and that includes non-solar customers and low-income customers. The state requires that we use this methodology and pay full retail rates to the solar customers until we reach 5% of our peak usage. And once we reach that 5%, the law allows for the local governing board to use their local decision-making authority over the solar rates that we pay for overgeneration. So I said that I'd talk about what retail rates are. So in Roseville, the average rate per unit of electricity is 11 cents. And that 11 cents is a bundled rate. What that includes is 6 cents of that 11 cents is actually the value of the electricity. So it's the actual electrons, and we measure electricity in kilowatt hours, and it also includes some transmission costs and some other costs that we'll talk about a little bit later. 5% of that 11-cent retail rate is what it costs us to do business. So that includes maintaining our grid, all of the reliability activities that we do, our substations, our meters, our poles, our transformers, our wires, our capital improvement program, as well as the money that under the charter that we transfer to police, fire, parks, and libraries. It includes the cost of maintaining and operating all the traffic signals and streetlights in town. It includes all the city services that the utility receives from the IT department, from the Human Resources Department. We also contribute towards the city council's budget as well as the city clerk's budget. That's all bundled in that 11 cents. Oh, and so that 5 cents, which is in addition to the 6 cents, is just the cost of doing business for a utility. Solar incentives are, for the most part, all temporary, and they all phase out. Currently, there's a 30% federal investment tax credit that begins to phase out in 2020 unless it's extended by the current administration. The state's credits expired some years ago. There was up to a 15% tax credit that the California offered. Our solar rebates which were required under SB 1, which was state law. We have issued over $10 million in rebates to rooftop solar customers since 2007, and that program is done under the state law. And then the last one, which is phasing out across the state with municipal utilities, specifically is the net energy metering that we're talking about tonight. So just to circle back on why we're recommending a change from the current program. And we're recommending a change to be consistent with the council's priorities, your 9 priorities, as well as the rate policies. Solar customers are subsidized, and they're paid more for the energy that they overgenerate. They're paid more than that energy is worth to the utility. Our budget is a zero-sum game. We have our rates are cost-based, and so if we're not collecting the amount what it costs us to serve one customer, we have to collect it from another customer. And future legislation may prevent your ability to make this decision. The program we're proposing tonight will be effective in October of 2018 when we expect to reach our 5% cap that's allowed under state law, and it would be for solar installations after that date. It provides a buyback rate for customers after that date that's cost-based for overgeneration. And it also provides a grandfathering period for existing solar customers. So any customer who puts solar on their roof up through this October 2018 date will be grandfathered into the program for at least 20 years from the date that their system was interconnected to our system. And I'll mention here that the grandfathering is our intent today, but all of this could be changed by future councils, just as any rate can be changed or any program can be changed by City Council.
Good evening, Mayor Rohan and council members. I'm Philip McAvoy with Roseville Electric, and I will walk you through the next few detailed slides. So what we're proposing with the Roseville Solar 2.0 program is putting an advanced meter on a new home or business that decides to put rooftop solar in after October of 2018. This advanced meter will have 2 registers that move in opposite directions. Some of the energy that a rooftop system, whether it's on a business or a home right now, is used to meet the load of that house. So it's like simultaneous generation and consumption. How much it varies on a per home basis depending on how the energy is used and when. What we're proposing is that the energy sold to the customer energy sold by the customer back to the grid will be credited at a buyback rate that we'll describe in detail later. That's represented by the yellow arrow, energy leaving the home, coming back to the other ratepayers. The blue bar represents energy consumed on the home that is delivered from the utility that will be charged at the standard retail rate like any other home or business. Next, please. So this is a somewhat complex slide, but we're trying to get multiple points across here. So what this represents is a day in the life, basically, of a Roseville home. The blue area represents the consumption as it varies throughout the day, increases as air conditioners and appliances turn on, and peaks about 6:30 at night here in Roseville. So represented by the blue bar. The orange and yellow hump in the middle is a typical generation shape for a Roseville home with solar on their roof. The orange area below the blue line represents consumed generation. So energy that is consumed and generated virtually simultaneously on a home. So as you can see in a typical home, most of the energy in Roseville, for a Roseville home, most of the energy is not leaving the home. It's offsetting on-site power demand. What we're discussing tonight is modifying that overgeneration area, the light yellow above the blue line. So when a customer is overgenerating for future solar customers, not existing, for future solar customers who overgenerate and are now being compensated the full retail rate of approximately 11 cents, that generation credit will reduce down to approximately 6 cents. That's the crux of the pricing change that's in the proposal before you tonight. Next, please. So the 6 cent I referred to is actually 5.98 cents in this proposal to go into effect in 2018, and it's made up of many components. This methodology that staff worked on for many months is very consistent with the other publicly owned utilities in California, what they've included as allowable and reasonable avoided costs. The biggest component of that 5.9 cents is the wholesale energy that we're not having to either generate at the Roseville power plant or purchase on the open market to serve that customer. So that's almost 3.9 cents. The system capacity of about 1.5 cents is what we do not have to allocate for that customer's reduced energy demand. Thirdly, about 1/3 of a cent in value is the avoided cost to the utility of purchasing renewable energy to serve that customer's load that they're serving on their own. The transmission is our network acquisition costs to access the Western Regional Transmission System. That cost is reduced because of this customer having on-site generation. And lastly, the line losses are basically leakage in the transmission system that this customer is also avoiding since the power is not going over the Western grid. Again, this rate that we're proposing is planned to be reviewed periodically in our general rate cases and is available for council modification in the future or in future councils. Next, please. Grandfathering is a common tool used by publicly owned utilities in California, and we have modeled ours after what other utilities have done for customers who have already invested in solar. So for those customers in Roseville who are currently solar customers or who will invest in a rooftop solar system before this program is anticipated to go live next October, they will be grandfathered for at least 20 years. So what this means is if a customer is put a solar system in before October of 2008, they will be grandfathered in a minimum of 10 years. So if they put their system in 2005, they're actually going to get more like 23 years of grandfathering. What we've also decided, and similar with what other publicly owned utilities have done in their NEM successor rates, is to allow systems to slowly grow over time if the consumption needs for that home grow over time to up to 10% and still remain grandfathered in the generous NEM program. So if a customer, for example, decides tomorrow they want to put solar in, they will be grandfathered until 2037 under the state mandated NEM program and would not be affected by this program until 2037. Next, please. So of our 3,000, almost 3,700 solar customers in town, we have 35 businesses who have put rooftop solar on their businesses, any from our large technology campus to a small grocery store over on Main Street. Their program and their impacts are identical to the residential. The program, the payback rate, the grandfathering is all identical for the business customers as the residential customers. We have contacted each of the individual 35 customers, described for them this program and the impact as we estimate it to them of this. Virtually all of the sizes of the systems put on these businesses is very small compared to their total usage, so the impact on these customers we believe will be minimal. There are a couple customers with larger systems. One of these business customers that put a system in 2015 does overgenerate and push energy to the grid regularly. That customer will be grandfathered through to 2035 under the old program and would not be impacted by this buyback rate change until then. The utility sought external confirmation of our model and our approach. We contracted with EES Consulting out of Washington State to review this methodology and the rate design. EES's findings, and I should back up, EES has also done similar rate design work for many other publicly owned utilities in California. Their report that was included in your council packet found that our methodology and the avoided cost components were consistent with how other utilities have designed their successor rate and their buyback rates, and that the buyback rate value provided to customers was very appropriate. Next, please. So this is a little busy slide, but I'll try to walk you through it. This represents the other publicly owned utilities, including irrigation districts and cities who own the electric utilities, what kind of a program they put in on their NEM successor after each of these entities reached their 5%. So the buy-sell represents a program mimics like Roseville, where we will buy excess generation at a defined rate and sell them energy when necessary at the standard retail rate. So the methodology we're using is very consistent with the other utilities, and I'll get to the two at the bottom before I leave this slide. The credit rate, as you can see, we have one of the lowest credit rates. They vary between almost ours at 6 cents up to about 7.5 cents. The primary variance, as you can see in the EES report, is that the cost to us to transmit power around the western area is less than typical utilities in California because we are not part of the California Independent System Operators. Our participation in the Balancing Authority of Northern California provides us with lower transmission costs. Therefore, the buyback rate and the avoided cost by rooftop solar customers is less. The status of our program in that column is proposed for your consideration tonight. All these other entities have already adopted their NEM successor programs. They've already surpassed their 5% mark. For SMUD and for Turlock Irrigation District, they have advanced metering systems that allow them to provide time-of-use rate options for their customers. And in SMUD's case, they're moving all their customers, residential solar and non-solar customers, to a time-of-use program over the next 2 years. And Turlock has a very unique short-run marginal cost method that nobody else has wanted to mimic yet.
So we have done quite extensive public outreach, and we've received quite a bit of feedback. So I wanted to walk you through that. So we issued a general information memorandum to the council earlier this year that outlined all of this at a higher level, but it explained what net metering is. It explained what we were looking to do. That we're looking to, once we reached our 5% cap, to do a more cost-based net metering program for our customers, and stating that we would do public outreach and that we would come back to the council. We have videos on our website. One video we created that actually shows with graphics and pictures how net metering works and how solar works on rooftops. We advertised in the Press Tribune. We used Facebook and Nextdoor social media. We went through this proposal at our Trusted Solar Advisor Workshop. We had a public meeting at MIDO. We met with the Arcona board. We also have had multiple discussions with the Building Industry Association. We met with them in May, and we've had continuing discussions with them. It's my understanding that they are not here to comment on this proposal tonight, and we have not heard that they would oppose this proposal tonight. We had a public meeting at the Riley Library at the request of the Arcona board meeting. They asked us for a second meeting. Sun City Government Affairs Committee. We have had multiple conversations, conference calls with the California Solar Energy Industries Association, CalSEA. A number of their representatives are here tonight. Actually got to meet them face-to-face for the first time. We presented this proposal to the Public Utilities Commission, who unanimously recommend approval to the City Council tonight, and we are here with the Roseville City Council. So the resident feedback that we've received, the majority of resident feedback has to do with grandfathering. There was a number of questions about grandfathering, what it meant. Mostly it was people who already have solar who wanted to make sure that they were going to be grandfathered in and not see this change right away. There were some folks that wanted a longer grandfathering period. Our grandfathering period recommendation is the same as every other municipal grandfathering period that's been approved in that slide before. So every one of those folks, with the exception of SMUD because they aren't actually approving a new NEM, but everybody else has a 20-year grandfathering. The residents appreciated the early notification. They really like that because it'll give folks that are considering solar, it gives them time to think about what they're going to do. And there were comments that our rates are too low now to make solar economic here in Roseville. And we had a question that can we guarantee that electric rates don't change, which it was a learning for us in that they understood that rates can go up. They didn't understand that the solar rate could change as part of that too. So we had quite a bit of conversations about that. But the majority of it was by far on the grandfathering. So we received quite a bit more feedback from the solar industry. And the primary comments were that it's going to make it harder to sell rooftop solar in Roseville. And one of the things that I think it's important to note is that 70% of the rooftop solar in Roseville today is on new home construction. So that's one of the primary reasons that we have so much solar here in Roseville is because of the new home construction, because we created a program early on to partner with the builders with solar. And that will continue because by 2020, all new homes built in California are going to have to be net zero energy homes, which pretty much means that any new home built after that time is going to have solar. Based upon the numbers we're getting out of the development group, we anticipate that we're going to see 2,200 new solar homes over the next 5 years in Roseville. So it's the majority of the sales are happening with new home construction, and we don't see that. We actually see that picking up rather than slowing down. There was a question about why we need to adopt the program now, and we thought it was important to give notice, good amount of notice to residents and businesses if they're thinking about doing this in the next couple years. We also wanted to provide the council an opportunity to make this decision before there could be legislation proposed to take that ability away for the local decision-making. And also, since our rate policies and your priorities guide us that our rate should be cost-based, if we waited, the subsidies would just continue not consistent with those priorities and policies. Another comment that our rate proposed is lower than other utility buyback rates. Philip talked about that. That we undervalue the benefit of the distributed generation on the system. And in the EES report, they confirm this. We don't see a significant impact to maintaining and building the grid in Roseville for distributed generation. Now, there's the avoided cost, which we're including in the cost, the buyback rate, but we still have to build the system as if the solar generation doesn't exist, because if a solar system isn't working, or like a few years ago, a third of the solar homes were told to shut their systems down, our system still has to be able to deliver the maximum amount of electricity needed to those homes. The comments that we may impact Roseville's solar-friendly image and may impact local solar-related jobs. As I mentioned, that we're anticipating 2,200 new solar homes over the next 5 years in Roseville. I think that's a pretty strong, it still will maintain Roseville's image. We should consider time of use rates similar to SMUD. We do not have the technology or the meters available today to do this. We are going to be installing time of use meters over the next 3 years. We should have them all in place within the next 3 years. And so if this were to be a recommendation, it would come probably sometime well after that, probably 4 to 5 years from now. That would be a possibility. And we should consider battery storage. So we do not have any legally permitted battery storage installations in town. That doesn't mean there aren't some, but it just means we don't have any legally permitted ones. So right now, we're not seeing high demand for battery storage in Roseville. And so when our customers start wanting this, when it becomes more financially viable, then we will look at that. And one option we could have down the road with the community solar project is once that project is up and running, we might be able to install some batteries out there to see how that would work. So in summary, the recommendation tonight is consistent with your priorities and policies. It reduces the subsidies that are currently being paid to more cost-based payments for overgeneration, provides advance notice for current customers if they're considering adding solar. There's grandfathering for existing customers to give them the 20 years or more on the old program. The buyback rate will be reviewed and included with future rate cases, and it's up to the City Council to determine what to do with those. And then, again, effective for solar installations after October 2018. And our recommendation tonight is for you to approve the attached ordinance with the changes to the municipal code related to the proposed Roseville Solar 2.0 program. And we're happy to
Council,
answer
are there any
questions.
questions? Go ahead.
Yeah. So the buyback rate is up to us, you just mentioned, for the future. One of the challenges will be if somebody is going to put solar on their house after the next year, and they're trying to cost estimate the payback for it at 6 cents now, because it won't instead of 11. Do we expect that buyback rate to get pressure to lower it? I mean, because that'll cause problems for people that are expecting that, kind of counting on that. So can you talk a little bit about that, what that might do to us?
Well, market prices for energy right now are at record lows. Natural gas prices are very low. There is a glut with fracking and natural gas supplies, and so energy prices are at very low, much lower than they were 10 years ago. If I could forecast energy prices, I would probably have a different job. But we are not seeing any increases in significant increases in energy prices in the near term. What is interesting is when you consider installing solar, when you buy a home with solar, it's already there. So most of our customers are just buying homes that already have solar. For the customers that are looking to install solar after that, they have to look at a couple of things. They have to look at what's the payment going to be for excess generation, but they also have to look at what the rates are that they're having to pay for the electricity from the utility. So in investor-owned utilities service territories in California, their rates sometimes are 4 times our rate. Easier to make that decision, but you don't know what their rates are going to look like. Most people would think that their rates would go up. And so typically the retail rate that a customer pays and the payback rate for overgeneration are correlated, just like ours are correlated. So I guess the answer to your question is we would look to recommend cost-based rates, both for the retail rate as well as the payment for overgeneration. The future councils in this council make that determination.
Saying right now, it seems like electricity is kind of at a low, so we won't have pressure maybe to lower it and cause frustration for people. I know you're not committing to anything, but that's one of my concerns. If we say, yes, this is what we're going to do, and all of a sudden we drop the rates to 3 cents or something crazy, it's like this is really going to frustrate people.
We do rate cases every 2 years. And so it would be looked at just like any other rate.
And if I can add one thing onto that, Councilmember, the buyback rate at the 6 cents is only for the overgeneration. We're still allowing the customer to offset all of their own on-site generation. That's not a requirement. That's a recommendation that we think is a balanced approach to this NEM program, as opposed to, for example, a more extreme measure where we dual meter the home and buy all the energy from the solar system at the buyback rate. That's an option we looked at, and we thought it would be too harsh for the customers who've already made that investment. So we think this, by only changing the buyback rate, or only changing the rate on the overgeneration, is a good balanced, middle-of-the-road approach that recognizes the ongoing subsidy, but also weighs the investment that current customers have made.
Okay, and then also on the buy-sell chart that you had that had all the prices and SMUD was lower than us and then Turlock or whatever wasn't even listed, we are significantly lower than everybody else's. And I think you referred to it, but it didn't show on there. We're kind of surprised we didn't put it on there. When you figure in the cost of the electricity, I'm guessing ours is actually really good. It doesn't, I mean, it looks bad on there, but because the electricity costs so little in the first place, do we have one of the better rates really?
The wholesale rate line that you mentioned for ours was 3.8 cents that customers are avoiding. It varies slightly from entity to entity depending on who they have contracts with and how efficient their local generation is in their portfolio mix. The biggest item, there were two items that were mentioned in the consultant report, and I mentioned at least one of them tonight in my presentation, was the transmission costs are lower for Roseville than most of those other entities. And the others is that our understanding and our opinion of the renewable portfolio standard law is that we cannot take credit for the renewable aspect of those rooftop solars. A couple of the other entities think they might in the future be able to claim that credit, but we have no information to substantiate that. The feedback from one of the other utilities who are applying that credit is that their solar penetration and their impact to them is so minimal that it wasn't worth the legal fight for them. So those are the two factors mentioned in the staff report why our buyback rate is lower than the other entities.
And I'll just mention that we, over the past few years, have had our lobbyists try to allow the utilities the ability to take the renewable credit for rooftop solar, and we have not been successful to do that. But if we can do that down the road, that would change this number.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
That would be more valuable
Especially for
to us.
Roseville, that'd be great.
It would be more valuable to us.
We'd love to have that renewable energy attribute, make our life easier on complying with the state mandates.
And then my last question is the comment about we have no legally permitted batteries, so the demand is low. Do we allow people to put batteries in, or
They are required to get a permit.
we will give a permit if somebody wants to do that?
Yes, and it
That's
depends.
interesting.
There's some fire department code requirements if you have more than one. They have to do some physical protections if you have more than one in your garage. But yes, we do allow them. They have to be permitted, and the fire department wants to know where they are for safety purposes.
That's interesting. We don't have any yet. That's surprising.
Well, we may. They just may not be
Well,
permitted.
Permitted.
Connie, did you have any clarifications you
don't.
needed right now?
No.
How about on this side?
I have just one question. You talked about potential state laws changing, so it's one of the reasons to do this now. If we get this in place, is that any anticipation that we'll be able to keep it in place? Or
Maybe.
we won't, but if we do, we might have a chance.
Right. There's been previous proposed legislation to prohibit local governing boards from approving any new NEM if they hadn't already. Also prohibiting anybody who hadn't already reached their 5% peak, from doing it in the future.
You know, Scott was asking questions about prices and things. Just throwing this out to you, the direction the state is headed with driving up gas prices and cap and trade fees and minimum wage increases and mandated benefits for employees. What are the chances of rates staying low? I mean, realistically, what are the chances of rates staying low in California with the drive from Sacramento to jack up the price of everything? I mean,
My personal opinion is, it's just like interest rates. They have to go up at some point.
Absolutely. They're going to go up. You know, with them driving the minimum wage up to 15 and all that pushes everything else up, the rates aren't going to stay as low as they are now, and we all know that.
Any other comment?
No, I just thought I needed to make that one.
I don't have any questions at this time. So we will now open it up to the public. I would like to note that I'm sure we have a number of speakers here this evening. A lot of people are not familiar faces here. Please remember the 5-minute time limit. And I would like to ask, because we let our Our high school kids go early. If there are any Roseville residents here who would like to address us first, so you can head home if you wish to, if you would please do that right now. Okay, no Roseville residents. All right, we'll go ahead then. And then the other thing for people who are not familiar with our procedures, speakers speak only one time. This is not coming back and forth. Okay, with that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. My name is Ed Murray. I'm with Aztec Solar, a Rancho Cordova-based solar contractor with 30 employees. I'm also the president of the California Solar Energy Industries Association, representing 450 contractors, manufacturers, distributors, and installers throughout the state. If this passes, will definitely decimate the solar retrofit market in Roseville. It's already happened in Turlock, and that went from exponentially decreased the amount of installations in Turlock, and that can be represented. I think we're going to have Kelly Knudsen from Calcea talk to that point. We also have several contractors and members of the association here to speak to the lack of or loss of jobs. So I urge you to keep the current net metering in place, or at least wait till smart meters come out into Roseville, so we have the direct effect of solar, just as SMUD did. I know it's going to take a little while to get those in place, but I think it's worthwhile waiting to get the smart meters in place to get the real benefit. There are societal benefits that weren't discussed in the ESS study that certainly come into effect with solar. So I urge you to not pass this, at least to punt it down the road to smart meters, or till there's more discussion and studies done with our group, with Kelly Knudsen from Calcea. And I thank you for staying up past my bedtime.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address us at this time?
Good evening, Mayor Rohan and Roseville City Council. My name is Justin LeBlanc of Rockland, California, though even being as close as I am considering purchasing property in this area and becoming a resident of Roseville, because I love your city so much. So I'm here to add to the discussion tonight something about the future of the grid. I don't know as anything was necessarily mentioned about different resources, capital costs, both maintaining existing equipment as well as building new equipment. I remember in a previous meeting there was a mention of a gas generation system that is currently, I think, underway for either retrofit or rebuild. And I know that as part of those activities, with the volatility of energy, right now it's at a historic low, but it could, given price spikes, given the pressures on supply, that the solar and battery technologies are looking more and more attractive as that goes in, and there are companies and cities in California that have already moved to moving away from a peaker plant type system that is based on natural gas and starting to implement systems which are battery based, which are both lower initial construction cost, but also more flexible in terms of being able to move the resource around to where the demand grows, and so to keep your distribution and transmission costs low. So that was one thing I wanted to bring to the table as far as a consideration for future-proofing the utility. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council this evening? Oh, we would have let you go home earlier, too.
Baby loves solar, so it's okay. My name is Noemi Gallardo. I work for Sunrun. It's a solar and storage installation company. We've been working for 10 years doing solar and just started rolling out storage in California. We work throughout the state, including Roseville. And I'm very concerned about the rate change because we will be one of those companies that won't be able to offer solar any longer in Roseville if the change occurs. And the list of utilities presented earlier that had changed the rates and were being compared to Roseville's, all those utility areas we don't work in any longer. So, you know, it would be really unfortunate, other than SMUD, so it would be really unfortunate if we can no longer work in Roseville. And we also have several centers, distribution center, warehouses in Sacramento, which is your neighbor, and we have a lot of workers there who also live in Roseville. So they will potentially be impacted as well. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that, and I reinforce Ed's comment earlier that we're asking maybe for postponing the vote so that we can be more thoughtful about what we can propose to you as, you know, a potentially good rate or good rate structure. And we would love to work with you. We've really appreciated working with the folks that we've spoken to thus far. And so thank you for that, and would appreciate you holding off on the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
My name is Robert Christofferson. I live off Blue Oak in the Eschaton Village subdivision. We moved here in February last year, and from Lincoln. We had 46 panels on our roof in Lincoln. We had a large house. We downsized when we moved here. And we're all excited about getting our solar panels up here in Roseville with all the talk about Roseville, and immediately ran into Roseville Electric, and they would not approve our permit. They would not allow us to put the panels on our roof until we lived here a full year and they could see who we were and what our load was. We said, we have a record in Lincoln, a 10-year record. No, we will not use anything from another utility. I went to the State Energy Commission. I called experts in the field. I'm a college professor. And Roseville Electric backed off and let us put our little 16-panel array up. So I've run into this behind the smokescreen attitude of Roseville Electric in protecting its peak load, its natural gas, its relationship with PG&E, and bargaining position in the markets. You don't want to decimate your solar industry here. You already have the highest fixed rate charge per month. We never paid over $7 a month in PG&E, and it's $24, $25, $26 a month here. The reason why you don't want to make a mistake on this hasn't been mentioned tonight, and it has to do with Earth's atmosphere. Last May, Earth's atmosphere hit 410 part per million carbon dioxide. 410. On May 17th, it actually hit 411. When I started my professorship in 1970, it was at 319. In 800,000 years, it had never been over 300 part per million. A new ice core shows that in 1.7 million years, it had not been over 300. It was 410 last May. So in your voting in this kind of two-sided thing that I ran into trying to get my little panels approved for my home, we've lost sight of what the solar energy thing is all about. It's about carbon footprint. If we get to 450 part per million, which will be in the mid-2020s, that's what the climate scientific community calls the tipping point. That's the dynamic metastable equilibrium. There might be more Hurricane Irmas. This is what we're looking at with chaotic behavior in Earth systems. This is what this is about tonight. You decimate the solar industry. You have these token centralized stations where a company gets the tax credit, not a Roseville resident. To try to offset that, you've got to get behind it full tilt. Build that, and don't hassle with $1,000 building permits for solar panels when they're only $250 in a city next door. It's because we hit 410 part per million. You haven't mentioned that, the carbon loading. I have more I could add, or I'll write a letter about the misrepresentation of peak load, stranded peak load, and how those loads are served by your capacity. That's another whole issue to look at, but please don't do something to make that hit 450 sooner. We can't afford that.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Any questions or thoughts?
I don't see any. Thank
Had you
you.
heard 410 part per million? Had you read that?
Sir,
Received emails.
you've completed your
I'm
testifying.
asking a question. I had a minute left when I went.
You've left the podium. Would you please come forward?
Curiosity is appreciated.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Council. My name's Erica Schweikert. I'm with Capital City Solar. We're a Roseville-based solar contractor. And I think my biggest concern with this, again, is aside from our company and whatnot, is the consumers and Roseville, the customers. We get 2 to 10 people at least a week calling or coming in asking about solar for their home or business in Roseville. And the payback is a little bit hard sometimes to juggle. But we all know there's a big benefit in providing solar for the environment, for the utility, and there has to be a benefit for the customer as well. So I just ask that you maybe do extend this decision till we can get on a playing field that's fair for everybody, so we don't have to cut out selling in Roseville, because that will happen if this passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address us?
Mayor Rohan and Council, Dave Schweikert Jr. I live in Granite Bay. I have a business in Roseville. We heard a few things. 35 businesses have solar. Pretty low number. I wonder why. A third of the solar systems had to be turned off. Why? This is the big mega stuff. Again, to focus on this, you should consider waiting for your decision. We've been selling into Roseville Electric since 2002, and it's always been, we since we're based around here, we sell into Roseville, PG&E, and SMUD. And Roseville has always been really difficult unless we come up against somebody that really has a green thumb and they're in it for our environment and future, clean breathing. So when it comes to the ROI, in Roseville, it's always a difficult thing. If you take this and you give them 6 cents to pay back, let me ask you this: what are they doing with that when it comes back to them? Are they charging the customer next door, which is using it, 6 cents, or are they charging them 11 cents? So these are good questions you might want to ask yourself before you make your decisions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Kelly Knutson with the California Solar Energy Industries Association. As Ed referenced earlier, it was actually great to see a bunch of the students here. I got started in doing this type of work back when I was a high school kid. We were supposed to go see like an open house by our local senator, so it's great to see him here. Unfortunately, they're no longer here to be able to share, but maybe they'll be done eating an In-N-Out burger by the time that I'm going to go there in a few minutes. So, so that should be a positive thing. Anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for the conversations that we've had. Thanks to Roseville Electric. We had some really good conversations on the phone. I actually really do hope to continue that conversation. Ed had referenced the Turlock had changed a couple years ago their net metering compensation to something akin to what's being proposed here for Roseville, and the residential solar installations dropped by 76% and commercial dropped by 61%. these are real numbers. Folks aren't really installing solar anymore. Roseville right now is ranked 9th in the nation for solar installations per capita. It's impressive for a municipal utility. It was actually a mutual friend of mine and Michelle's, Julia, that introduced us, and so I'm really glad she did that. It was great to have that conversation. But she's with the Solar Energy, and now the Smart Electric Power Administration does these rankings. So you're recognized nationally for doing great work. I hope that you can continue that. The studies, it's really clear. I've been working on this for quite a while. I used to work at the Department of Energy and their solar program, and there's studies on one side, studies on another side, and they'll have there's benefits here, there's costs there, benefits there, costs. And I think I'm not trying to hand wave, but I think a lot of this was actually mentioned. This is a judgment call of what do you want to have for the city of Roseville? Do you want to still have solar to continue to grow, and also local storage as well as the local jobs? There's 3,000 jobs in Placer County that are supported by the solar industry. Hope to see them continue to grow, as well as new homes that are being developed. I know it's like 70% are going to have of the solar in the city are with new home construction, and there have been some concerns that have been shared. I know on some of these conversations with the new home developers. Sun Street is a CalCIA member, and they have had shared their concerns with us about what the next California Electric Code will have with requiring solar. Well, if we're going to build a new home, if we're going to do that in Roseville, that's going to have it's not going to be very attractive compared to if they were in PG&E or SMUD territory. So that's just something they've shared with me. I just want to make sure I'm passing along here tonight as one of the things that hadn't been mentioned yet. But getting back to the study side, statewide, the Public Utilities Commission made a determination that they weren't going to change net metering on the whole. They lowered it a little bit from a retail rate to having all customers paying, and solar customers in particular, paying the non-bypassable charges, making sure they're paying for a lot of the things that need to be maintained with the grid. But they still kept it pretty close to retail net metering. Same with SMUD nearby. They also kept retail net metering, but with time of use rates. And part of those decisions were that it isn't clear on where the costs and benefits are. And the CPUC actually kicked the can to net metering 3.0 to be able to make that decision. So I would hope that Roseville could also consider to have continue to have those conversations. And I know that smart meters, it sounds like a few years out, but I do think that those would provide some additional opportunities to look at what could be done in Roseville with solar. In addition to time of use, there's other creative ways that we could look at how to be able to continue to grow solar in Roseville, as well as hopefully by that point the cost of storage will come down just as the cost of solar has as well, and could have even more opportunities and benefits in that point. So with that, I'd just like to close and say I really appreciate you guys considering to be able to delay this decision, and so that we can continue to talk about what options could be out there, or even just straight out say, it'll be all right to continue net metering into the future. I know that we're hitting in October 2018, and it's good to have a good heads up, but it'd also be nice. I think the solar community and others have the heads up that you guys are considering something, so that's good. But I think that there's time still to be able to have a rate that'll work well for Roseville ratepayers and as well as the solar industry. So thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council?
Good evening, Mayor Rohan, council members. My name is Andy Russell. I work for Capital City Solar. I was a Roseville resident for 2 years. Had a very happy time. My family grew and I moved to Orangevale. Just really two things that jumped out. The 35 businesses that have solar in our big city, that's a very small amount. And really just, are we here to lead or are we here to follow? We saw a lot of other smaller utilities changing to these low rates. I would think it's up to Roseville to take a lead in that, not go to those low rates and really grow solar in our community. You know, I go to people's homes every day in Roseville and it's very exciting. They have the opportunity to get solar for their homes. There are a lot of homes that are suitable for solar in our neighborhoods, and I just want to be part of a city that leads and not follows. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the council? All right, we're going to close public comment now. Council, are there any questions that you want to ask of staff based on what you've heard from public testimony?
Yeah, I think, and I appreciate all your comments, and I really do. The big question, I think, and what I've always thought about for solar in Roseville and why we don't have more retrofits is just that our electric rates are so low, and it makes it challenging. I've got family that's been in solar contracting for close to 20 years now, so he was in it early, and I still don't have a system on my house because it just doesn't pencil out. Now I do other things to be green, so don't think I'm a terrible person. So what because they say to do more solar, but we're still just barely inching along with retrofits, and the majority of the new homes or the new solar in Roseville sound like it's going to come from new home construction. And short of raising our electric rates so everybody else wants to tar and feather us up here, what could we do to stimulate more electric, more solar rooftop retrofit? I mean, or something like that, so that it's not.
Well, you approved moving forward with the community solar project tonight. So that is one, that's not a retrofit push, but that is expanding the solar universe in Roseville. So that is one thing. Again, the proposal aligns with the council priorities and policies for cost-based rates. And so I guess you would have to tell us where you would like to see that change.
John?
Michelle, isn't it true that when a lot of the federal and state subsidies went away for solar, that had a tremendous impact in the whole solar industry of retrofitting? I mean, it used to be that there was tremendous benefit at the state and federal level to.
There's still significant benefit at the federal level. What I've read and talked to folks about is that they're thinking that with the price of solar coming down and the federal, the solar industry, I believe, and you all can disagree with me, but I believe that the industry believes that there will not be significant impact when the federal incentives phase out. That they think that the cost of the systems have come down enough that when the federal incentive phases out, they should be okay. Especially if battery storage technology comes along the way that some hope it will.
I guess the other question I have is, I've heard a number of people say, just delay. I mean, it sounds to me like you've spent a tremendous amount of time with public input and working with the industry and talking to people about what you're proposing. Delay is going to get us what? How much more input do you folks want in this? It sounds to me like you've had tremendous public outreach, and with the industry, and we're where we are, and I don't know what delay is going to change it. Is my
we did
question.
delay it for 2 months. We
Right.
were we had this agendized for July 6th or July 5th or 6th, and we did delay it to be able to have conversations with the industry.
Bonnie?
So I think often we promote Roseville as a place where it's a great place to do business because our energy rates are lower, our electric rates are lower. And that's because we have a city-owned utility. And we work really hard to keep those rates low. Our staff works hard to do that. And so that's a reason to do business in Roseville. I tout it all the time. And there's a reason we have large companies like, was it McClasson? McKesson. And companies like that are moving to our community for a number of reasons, but because we're business friendly, our rates are lower. And I appreciate the input that we've received from folks about solar, and solar is a valuable asset to have in our energy portfolios. But we have gotten to that point where our ratepayers have subsidized solar. And now we're the place where we have we're almost at that point where we can now go back to our ratepayers and say, it's not necessarily your responsibility to subsidize other people's cheaper rates. So, I think solar is terrific. We are in the enviable position where we have lower rates. And you can go to Rockland and sell solar all day long, and people would be, I'm sure, happy to have it because they are in the PG&E service area, and it costs them a lot more money. And I have a hard time saying that our ratepayers should subsidize others when this is a for-profit business as well. I mean, it definitely benefits our community to have solar and provides options, but I have a hard time saying that our ratepayers should continue to subsidize the solar when we're going to hit that maximum amount that we're required to hit, and I think this is a reasonable choice right now to make so that people still have another year to get solar on the roofs if they want to have additional benefits.
Okay, yes.
Can I make a comment? I don't have a question, but so I've put a lot of time, and I'm sure several council members have, dealing with emails. I've had meetings with some people from the solar industry and a lot of phone conversations as well. And I appreciate you delaying because I know I sent you a ton of questions that I wanted answered. And again, I'm sure other council members have. We don't talk with each other, so I'm just assuming that. But so some of the things that I have been thinking about and what are leading me to be supportive of this is the issue if California passes a law that won't allow us to take control. I think that's important, and we need to protect our ratepayers on that. So we need to make a good decision. So if we can make a change now so that we can own it, possibly, if they won't let us do it later, they may take it all away, but this sounds like there's a chance if you make it now, we can at least still stay in control. I think that's important and responsible for us. We're going to be saving money for the ratepayers. We should never apologize for that. The money that's being saved is not going to stockholders. We're not PG&E. These go to the ratepayers, and we are responsible to those ratepayers to give them affordable energy, and we're doing a great job as far as having the low cost. We have very low costs around. I mean, SMUD's our main competitor, and not even a competitor because we're publicly owned, but so we already have lowest rates for customers, are right around there. We're already using 50% clean energy, and it's increasing. So we don't have coal plants or anything. I mean, we've got a natural gas plant that we run only once in a while when we need to save some money. Only 5% of our rooftops are going to have solar, and 70% of those 5% are all new home. And all the stuff we see coming, the 22 homes that are coming are all brand new homes. So we're one of the most solar cities in the nation already. There's nothing to apologize for there. When it comes to retrofitting, yeah, that's an issue. But again, I feel bad for the industry because you already have a hard time putting solar in Roseville because our rates are so cheap. But we shouldn't apologize that our rates are cheap. It's just harder to pencil out because you don't save as much. And in solar, the plan is solar is going to be required in 2020. So we're already having 2,200 new homes coming in the next 5 years. A few years down the road, all those are going to be required to have solar, so it's just going to continue. So I'm feeling like I don't want to apologize for having low rates. I feel bad for the industry, but we've actually done something wonderful for you because now for once you can actually sell solar in Roseville for the next year like crazy. So you have a really good reason to sell it. And that ought to help you with a boom for the next year. After that, it's going to get really thin, but it already is thin, it looks like, by the numbers. So just from an economic standpoint, I think we owe it to our ratepayers to make a good decision.
It's the lateness of the hour. I'm not going to go into any great detail. I agree with everything that I've heard by council people, and so I think we have consensus here. Unless someone disagrees, I would like to have the clerk read the proposed actions.
To introduce for first reading ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville amending sections 14-24020 and 14-24051 of Chapter 14 of Title 14 of the Roseville Municipal Code regarding public utilities. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Gore,
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman. Yes. Councilmember Allard. Yes. And Mayor Rohan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.